It's 1 in the morning. You told yourself you would sleep after a single episode. Then the scene cut off mid-sentence, right before the reveal, and now you're staring at the ceiling instead of sleeping. You tell yourself it's just a good show. But the real reason you can't let it go has almost nothing to do with the story, and it is far stranger than you think. It starts, of all places, with a waiter in a Berlin cafe in the 1920s. A psychologist named Lewin used to sit in that cafe with his students, and he noticed something strange about the way the waiter worked. The man could hold a dozen complicated orders in his head at once. No notepad, no receipt. Tables, substitutions, modifications, all tracked perfectly, all recalled instantly. Then, the moment a bill was paid, something changed. Lewin decided to test it. He asked the waiter to recall an order from a table that had already settled its bill a short while earlier. Nothing. The man couldn't remember a single detail. The same mind that had juggled a dozen live orders without effort had completely erased one the moment it was finished. Why would a memory that sharp just switch off like that? Lewin brought the puzzle to one of his students, a young psychologist named Bluma Zeigarnik. In 1927, she decided to test it properly. She gave people a series of small tasks, simple ones, solving puzzles, stringing beads, assembling little paper boxes. She let them finish some of the tasks completely. Others, she interrupted partway through, quietly pulling the materials away before they were done. Afterward, she asked everyone to recall exactly what they had been working on. Which tasks do you think stuck? The results were almost too clean. People remembered the interrupted tasks far more often than the ones they had actually completed. Something about leaving a task unfinished burned it into memory in a way that finishing it never did. This became known as the Zeigarnik effect, and it describes something running quietly underneath almost every hour of your day. Lewin had a theory for why this happened. Starting a task, he believed, creates a kind of psychological tension. Think of it as a live circuit in the mind, one that stays switched on until the task is finished. Finish it, and the tension releases. The circuit closes. The memory is free to fade. Leave it unfinished, and the tension stays live, keeping the memory charged and easy to retrieve. Almost like your brain refuses to file away something it still considers active work. Have you ever noticed how an unfinished thought seems to hum louder in your mind than a finished one? Later researchers didn't always get identical results. Some replications came back weaker. Some came back stronger, depending on how motivated people were to finish the tasks in the first place. But the core finding held up again and again, in different forms, across different decades. Interruption changes memory. Incompletion changes attention. Something about an open loop refuses to sit quietly in the back of your mind. Have you ever left an argument unresolved? Not because it was settled, but because someone had to leave, or a call dropped, or you simply walked away first. Did the argument end for you in that moment? Or did you spend the rest of the day replaying it, rehearsing the exact sentence you should have said instead? That replay isn't you being petty. It isn't you dwelling. It's your brain doing precisely what Zeigarnik's puzzle solvers did back in 1927, treating an unfinished loop as unfinished business, something that has to stay loaded, ready, ranked as urgent. This is also why a friendship that fades out slowly, with no real ending, can stay with you longer than one that ends in a clear, decisive fight. A clean break, however painful, still closes the loop. A slow fade never does. Your brain keeps a small file open for that person indefinitely, quietly wondering every so often what happened, why they stopped calling, whether you did something wrong. For decades, psychologists mostly accepted the effect and left it there. Then, in 2011, two researchers asked a sharper question. Roy Baumeister and E.J. Masicampo wanted to know whether incompletion itself was really the trigger, or whether something else was going on underneath it. They gave participants an important task, then interrupted them before they could finish. One group was told to simply think about finishing the task later, in general terms. Another group was told to write down a specific plan. Exactly when, exactly where, exactly how they would return to it. Only one group actually stopped thinking about the unfinished task. It was the group with the specific plan. The vague group kept circling back to it. The same intrusive loop playing again and again, the same mental tab refusing to close. This meant the Zeigarnik effect was never really about completion. It was about closure. Your brain doesn't need a task finished. It needs a plan it can actually trust. This changes what an unfinished moment really means to you. It isn't the show or the argument or the 40 unread emails sitting in your inbox that your brain is obsessed with. It's the absence of a resolution it can rely on. Somewhere underneath conscious thought, your brain is running a constant background check. Is this handled? And until it receives an answer that satisfies it, the file stays open, tugging at your attention like a hand pulling at your sleeve. Now picture your ancestors, tens of thousands of years ago, tracking a wounded animal through tall grass. If that hunt only occupied the mind while the animal stayed in sight, vanishing the instant the trail went cold, that hunter would starve. A mind willing to let go of unfinished threats, unfinished food, unfinished danger does not survive very long. A mind that keeps unfinished things loaded and ready to resume, animals still out there, threads still live, has a real advantage. Is it any surprise that letting go feels so unnatural? The itch to return to something unresolved was never a flaw. It was tuned by survival across a timescale so long it's difficult to hold in your mind. And here is the counterintuitive part. The exact mechanism that once kept your ancestors alive by refusing to release an unfinished hunt is now being triggered dozens of times a day by things that were never designed with your survival in mind at all. A show ending mid-scene is not an accident. Writers understand the Zeigarnik effect even if they've never heard its name. A small red notification badge on your home screen is not neutral design either. It's a deliberately unfinished loop sitting in your pocket, quietly asking your brain the same question it's been asking since the savannah. Is this handled? A message marked delivered but not read does the same thing. So does an inbox with dozens of unopened emails. So does a video game that saves your progress right before the final boss instead of after. None of this is an accident on the design side either. Product teams building the apps on your phone study attention for a living. They know an unfinished loop pulls harder than a finished one. So they build in features that never quite let a loop close. An inbox that always shows one more unread count. A feed that never technically ends. A like count that refreshes just often enough to feel worth checking again. This same pull explains why Charles Dickens released his novels in serialized installments back in the 1800s, ending chapters at the worst possible moment to make readers desperate for the next issue. It explains why a social media feed never really ends. Why one more scroll always feels like it might deliver the thing your brain is still waiting for. It explains why the words "to be continued" have been selling magazines and movie tickets for more than a century, long before anyone had a name for what was actually happening inside the audience's mind. Think about a fitness streak on your phone, the little flame icon that grows if you show up today and vanishes if you don't. That isn't just an aesthetic choice, it's another open loop, engineered to feel unfinished, so your brain keeps circling back to it day after day, refusing to let the streak end the same way it refuses to let an interrupted task end. Sound familiar? None of these things carry the danger of a wounded animal. But does your brain actually know the difference? Not entirely. It simply registers open loop, open loop, open loop, and keeps a small share of your attention locked onto each one, the same way it locked onto Lewin's waiter's unpaid orders, the same way it locked onto Zeigarnik's interrupted beadwork almost a century ago. Have you ever wondered why closing your laptop at the end of a long day doesn't actually make your mind stop working? The tasks you left unfinished don't clock out along with you. They ride home in the passenger seat. They sit at your dinner table. They wait quietly beside your bed. That's not a discipline problem. That's the Zeigarnik effect, doing exactly what it evolved to do,